Welcome to the bottom of the rabbit hole. Salute to you for coming through. You are always appreciated. In this video, I'm going to address the Yahya Abdul-Mateen Morpheus rumor specifically, because I mentioned going into more detail about this topic at the very end of my last video, and even more articles have been posted since then, making new young Morpheus claims. So if this is your first time down here, or you want to know everything about the Matrix universe, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you do not miss out on any Matrix 4 updates. Okay, so this rumor that Yahya Abdul-Mateen II will be playing Morpheus in the Matrix 4 simply refuses to fade away. And these additional stories that got posted talking about a young Morpheus clearly have not put in as much research into tracking the complete timeline of this rumor that I did in the Where is Morpheus video here on this channel. So I am feeling really confident about the work that is being done here, and be sure to watch that video if you haven't seen it already to get yourself caught up. I'll leave links in the description, and shout out to resident Matrix Online curator Vesuvius for sharing this Instagram post with me, because when I tracked down the original source of the information, there are some things in that article that I would like to point out. The article is titled, Watchmen's Yahya Abdul-Mateen II to play Morpheus in Matrix 4 exclusive. In the article it says, quote, Actor Yahya Abdul-Mateen II's leading role as a young Morpheus in the upcoming, untitled, and unexpected sequel Matrix 4 has been uncovered by the Illuminerdi. In October, Variety's Justin Kroll broke the news that Abdul-Mateen II would be joining the cast of the new film in an unspecified role. In that report, they made mention that a young Morpheus would also appear in the film. Our sources close to the production have definitely confirmed that this younger iteration of Morpheus will indeed be portrayed by Abdul-Mateen II, end quote. So they acknowledge that Justin Kroll was the first to break the Yahya Abdul-Mateen young Morpheus rumor, which is not to be confused with the Michael B. Jordan young Morpheus rumor. But what makes this article different from the others is that they claim to have a new source who is also confirming a quote younger iteration of Morpheus. I do not like the fact that they do not say who the source is, and I am also no English major, but the little grammatical errors always leave room for doubt. But I want you to notice the very subtle change in the wording of the description here from young Morpheus to younger iteration of Morpheus, because when I look at the complete history of this rumor as it pertains to Yahya Abdul-Mateen directly, I believe that these developments and rearrangements of the wording only support my theory of how Morpheus will appear in the Matrix 4, especially since they say this will be a lead role. In order to best explain how I think this role will play out in the Matrix 4, we're going to have to jump back into the DeLorean, back to a time when the Matrix Online video game was still online and alive. Allow me to accurately paint the picture behind this story, because not only was the game a great gaming experience where the storyline itself was approved by the Wachowskis, but the Matrix Online forum community was filled with different fan art storylines that opened up an entire world of roleplay within the universe the game created. And the disclaimer here is that, of course, my fan art story was not official canon, and yet the background behind the What If I Told You video on this channel can serve as a detailed illustration of where I think the new Morpheus character might be going in the next film. When you first started the game, you had to choose the ideology of your character, and your options were Zion, Merovingian, or Machine. I decided to become a machinist in the game, and my real-world roommate at that time started a Machine faction. I took on the role of the Minister of Information, also known as the Skynet Governor, and the reason for that name was the fanfiction backstory that we created for our faction and the forums. The idea was a combination of the Terminator and Matrix franchises, and please bear in mind I came up with this backstory before I ever heard anything about Miss Sophia Stewart's claims. In my version of this story, each time travel event creates a new version of reality. If time is to be considered linear, once someone or something travels backwards in time, it would create a multiverse for that original timeline. There would be an original version of reality where no such time travel existed, and then a new timeline reality to facilitate any changes that were made. So I applied these rules of time travel to our faction's history, and also keep in mind that this story was created after Terminator 3 was released, but before Terminator 4 Salvation came out. So the story goes that once Sarah and John Connor defeat and prevent Judgment Day at the end of Terminator 2, that reality continued on to become the timeline, or prequel, for the version of reality that ultimately created the Matrix. And that the events from the Terminator 3 film, where despite the events of Terminator 2, Skynet still becomes self-aware, this T3 timeline serves as the origins for our faction. The main idea is that the self-awareness of artificial intelligence is in itself inevitable, unavoidable, despite even trying to go back in time to prevent it. And as a result, These self-aware machines continue to learn and understand more about the consequences and rules of time travel. At some point, the machine intelligence from the Terminator T3 timeline makes contact with the machine intelligence from the Matrix timeline, at which point they strike a deal with each other that I called an information sharing agreement. Skynet wanted to learn how the architect was able to control 99% of humanity with minimal to no resistance. In exchange, the architect wanted to learn how the Skynet machines were able to operate so very efficiently and create incredible technology such as the T-1000. In exchange for trading these mechanized secrets, Skynet would send programs across realities through beams of light, and the Matrix provided resurrected human hosts to serve as the bodies for these programs, so that they could not only be in the Matrix, but have the complete human experience. For a lack of a better description, the characters in our faction were Skynet infiltration programs inside human bodies that could only send information back to Skynet, but could never return to their original reality. A one-way ticket to the Matrix to serve Skynet. What is really funny to me is after creating this storyline, Terminator Salvation is released, which is the only Terminator film where the main perspective is from an infiltration bot that was once completely human, and then several years after that movie, Terminator Genesis used a multiple reality timeline model very similar to what I just described in our story. The only difference being that they used the term nexus point to describe the merging of timelines. So now let's apply this same storyline to my meeting with Morpheus. Okay, so you've heard the backstory. We get our faction up and running, and then this happens. That's right, Morpheus gets killed. Very early in the game, I might add. Morpheus demanded that the machines return Neo's body to Zion, and a Merovingian assassin killed Morpheus at the end of the first chapter. Simply put, I was pretty upset about that storyline in the game. Fast forward to chapter 7, and Morpheus returns to the Matrix Online, but this version of Morpheus was revealed to be a program, or a Morpheus sim. And I took this opportunity to make right what I considered to be a wrong of killing Morpheus in the Matrix Online. I recorded a mission with the Morpheus sim, and traveled back in time to show it to the real Morpheus just before he died. This created a nexus point, or a new version of reality, by showing Morpheus a future version of himself. It gave birth to what is known as a John Connor paradox, where the version of Morpheus on the timeline that is shown himself is connected to that future in the same way that John Connor's father is from the future. John Connor can only be born if his father is a time traveler. Without Skynet creating a time machine, John Connor cannot be born. In this case, showing Morpheus, the Morpheus sim, and instructing Morpheus to make sure that he dies inside of the Matrix, the Morpheus sim is connected to the actual consciousness of the real Morpheus. And while I openly admit that this fan art story was in no way official or approved of by the Wachowskis in any way, there is a clue that suggests it is certainly an avenue that can be taken. Let's ignore for a moment that these fan art ideas were 2 for 2 in the Terminator installments that followed, but if you watch the Chapter 1.2 MXO Cinematic, which was the installment just before the death of Morpheus in 1.3, you can see him eating one of the Oracle's cookies. For those who might have missed this reference in the Matrix trilogy, here is the definition of an internet cookie. An HTTP cookie, also called web cookie, internet cookie, browser cookie, or simply cookie, is a small piece of data sent from a website and stored on the user's computer by the user's web browser while the user is browsing. Cookies were designed to be a reliable mechanism for websites to remember stateful information or to record the user's browsing activity. They can also be used to remember arbitrary pieces of information that the user previously entered into form fields such as names, addresses, passwords, and credit card numbers. I believe that this is a heavily overlooked reference throughout the Matrix trilogy. The Oracle's cookies are how she is able to predict the future with such accuracy and say all of the right things to the right people. In this case, it could be used to justify the caching of Morpheus's consciousness into the Matrix 4. It is also the perfect excuse to justify another actor playing Morpheus if we are dealing with a programmed version of Morpheus with a new shell. We've already seen actors being replaced due to circumstance and explained why they look different in the Matrix trilogy and Sense8. Is Yahya younger than Lawrence Fishburne? Absolutely, but I do not expect this role to be any kind of extended flashback or prequel. Speaking of misleading, a lot of these articles are drawing plot conclusions from the so-called leaked audition tapes. For all we know, the game they could be making reference to is The Matrix Online. I doubt anyone writing these articles would make such a connection because I doubt any of them actually played MXO. For anyone who wants to hear breakdowns of the Matrix Online chapters, Vesuvius has posted a collaborative discussion podcast that I was honored to be a part of. I will put a link in the description box for that as well. A Morpheus program would not violate any of these so-called leaked statements up to this point, and until there is verified information that states otherwise, that's my theory and I'm sticking to it. I know all of this might be a bit confusing, so if you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask them in the comment section, and remember, as one realizes that one is a dream figure in another person's dream, that is self-awareness.